Hey everybody, this is Talkative Carl back again for another movie spoiler review. And today I will be talking about Matrix Resurrections. Uh Probably the second most anticipated movie for me this year that I really wanted to talk about. I initially wanted to see this in the movie theater, but Spider-Man No Way Home kind of encapsulated or at least took over the bulk of like a lot of people's interests. Uh but I still wanted to see this movie. Thank God it came out on HBO Max because I think like most people probably watched this on HBO Max. At least a good half people like watch this on HBO Max, especially during the holiday week this movie came out on. They might have seen it over the weekend, but I had to take some time to watch this at least twice. The first time, initially, I wanted to, watch it and then do a review. I watched it kind of late, so I was falling asleep, in certain parts, and I don't think I retained it. I just felt like I liked it, so I had to rewatch it again. So then, now that I absorbed it, I know I like it. I actually do like it, and I was hoping that because how much of a stinker Matrix 2 and 3 was, that now there's been time that passed and people have a better understanding of like what was wrong with those and what could have been improved on, and mostly because they're pretentious speeches that need to be dialed back some, or at least simplified, because it felt like certain, like the guy in all white, that was probably the prime example of him, and maybe secondary is maybe Morpheus, that kind of dragged on with their philosophical speeches, and they kind of like, I feel like in this movie they kind of dialed that back some, because now we have some, you still get your philosophical talk, but it's simplified, and it's short, kind of not so short, like it's like super dumbed down, but it's like you're kind of like, okay, you got to the point, what you can say in 3 minutes, you don't need to take 10 minutes to say. I'm glad about that. That's one of the highlights for me that I'm glad they rectified. Of course, you get some awesome returns from Keanu Reeves as Neo. What's I supposed to say? Carrie Ann Moss. This is Carrie Ann Moss, right? Yeah, Carrie Ann Moss, and Jada Pinkett Smith as Niobe. They're the OG people that came back from for this movie. However, Lawrence Fishburne did not return for the role as Morpheus, but you get to see certain shots, because that's another thing. They kind of like, I won't say beat you over the head with it, but they kind of like, give you little shots here and there to remind you who these people are, or at least what happened prior. And it's usually the highlights of the first movie, because I think they want to show as little as much as possible of what was in Matrix 2 and 3, because they left such a sour taste in a lot of people's mouths. So it's primarily like flashbacks to the first Matrix movie. And I gotta say, like, Matrix Resurrection should have been the proper sequel to the first Matrix movie. But anyway, of course, like, besides Keanu Reeves, the great Keanu Reeves, Sir Keanu Reeves, you got Carrie Ann Moss back as Trinity, and of course Jada Pinkett Smith back as Niobe. But you get some newcomers. You got Yahya Abdul Mateen II playing as Morpheus. And I want to mention, even though he's taking over in the role for Morpheus, to be like a younger Morpheus, here's another criticism about like the Matrix films in general back in the day. They was just nothing but clad in just latex leather, which is just, it was the thing back in like early 2000s, like right tail end of 1999 into like 2001. It's like everything seemed like it was like clad in black leather all the whole time, and it's like it was annoying that you gotta constantly, not even just in the mixtures movies, you saw that in the X-Men, the first 3 X-Men films, well, primarily the first 2, X-Men films, and like it was just, other films that's just riddled with like just black, because that was the thing. I think the first mixtures movie kind of set a precedent that, oh, it was popular, so not, it's just like with the DC EU or other, studio properties, they trying to, rush in to be like Marvel because it's popular right now, so we all have to do like that just to be just as successful, and like that obviously never works out well. But the thing, like, I like the actor fine, but his outfits, the reason I bring up about clothes is because I think they had to make sure that we gotta scale back the black clothing. It's like, well, these black leather, like take out the black leather, that's not even in style anymore like that, and just, you want to wear black, just make it just, casual clothes, you don't need to be clad in leather, head to toe. But I think the clothes they chose for Morpheus seems a little extreme. It's a little like a flamboyant Morpheus almost, not to put any shade on the guy, but it's just like, or at least the costume designers part, but it's just like they really went colorful. Like he sucked all the color into his own clothes kind of situation. Like, okay, there's making sure that you're not drab in black, and then there's Circus Soleil, and it's like, can't you just give us normal clothes? It's like, just normal colors. It's like, you don't have to, sprinkle dust Crayola all over his outfits. You know what I mean? It's just me personally. That's how I feel about like the way they got him dressed. It's like, it's just very flamboyant. But then you also have another new person, Jessica Henwick as Bugs, who has, what's with the blue hair? Is she trying to do the whole hip? I don't even know if it's hipster. It's just like, oh, she's young, so she got to be like unique with like, with this Arcane / Sonic the Hedgehog hairstyle. Like, God, because nobody just be normal with hair and clothes. It's like, come on. It's very nitpicky, but it's me personally. It's like, why does it gotta stand out? Do you need to stand out? You're fine. I mean, I already liked the character, but it's just that the blue hair. It's just like, it's not that different from like that in the original Matrix movie with that woman dressed all in white and with like white spiky short hair. It's like, God, nobody can just dress in normal colored clothes and just, you don't have to stand out like a sore thumb. Then you got Jonathan Groff, who plays Smith, kind of like a recreation of Smith. And I really like this, because they didn't recast Hugo Weaving, but this guy did an excellent job. It's like, he's like obviously, has Smith tendencies, but it's like an evolved Agent Smith who's still unplugged, but another anomaly in a sense. And Priyanka Chopra Jonas plays Sadie. If you remember it from I think it was the second. I can't remember if it was the second or third film. I think it was the third film, where during that train subway scene where Neo meets this family of Indian Americans, and like they had this little girl, and once the events of the machine war was over, a lot of the exile programs end up getting rebooted or deleted, but she was left safely, so she ended up essentially growing up. Because like in the real world, 60 years has passed, so that's why Niobe is an older woman, and while Neo's still only Neo and Trinity only age, fairly slowly, because they did die, but they were reassembled. We'll get to that in a moment. How's it? Excuse me. Okay, I think that's like the primary. There's other people, but I'm covering like the primary people here. But anyway, the movie begins. It seems like Bugs and some of her crewmates are like rewatching somehow like I can't tell if it's like a simulation of a replay of past events of the moment where you are introduced to Trinity for the first time, and she's fighting these police officers inside this warehouse while she's on the phone, and then the fight thing goes on like you expect it to, but she's like, Bugs is like behind a wall, watching this play out again. But as the gunfire goes off, I can't tell if it's supposed to be like you're just watching a simulated past events or the actual real thing, because because you see later on as she's watching her running away from these agents, and she's looking on from afar, but then she got busted herself by some agents, and then they end up fighting her, and then she falls in the same area where the other agents are cornering Trinity, and they're acknowledging her, and I'm thinking like, okay, is this supposed to be like a playback situation? Because if it's not, then while she was in that warehouse while that fight is going on where the cops are shooting, she should have gotten hit from all that gunfire. She just watching on like she's watching a movie, like the gunshots aren't real. But then it's like, and then you see like these agents looking on and watching. It's like, okay, what's going on here? That part I'm confused on. It's like it's like a simulation that's playing back, or they actually are going back in history. It has to be a simulation, but how come the original agents that was fighting Trinity are acknowledging her if it's just like a playback? But anyway, she ends up getting chased down, and one of the agents that's somehow behaving a little bit strangely pulls her into a private room that turns out to be the apartment of Thomas Anderson, aka Neo, which I'm glad they actually are acknowledging the alter ego of Neo, his original name, because they kind of like abolished that after the first movie, but they bringing it back. But then this is like a reinvented Morpheus with little hints of Agent Smith inside him, which he mentions how like is a little bit chaotic, but is like a brand new Morpheus. And so he gets unplugged, and you can tell like they trying to not to be like so serious as I won't say there's like no humor in the previous films, but it's like everything is like so kind of solemn in a way, like it's like not melodramatic, but you know what I mean, just like kind of stoic wooden acting. But this time they trying to it's like a do-over in a sense, you know what I mean? It's like they acknowledging this stuff that they were wrong before, and they get like a second bite at apple this time around. And now they like you see like after he taking that red pill, Morpheus like sprouts up from one door, and he's like swerving on, like he looked like behaving like Stevie Wonder in a way for some doggone reason. And like, what's up, fellas? And it's like, okay, it didn't play well for me as far as like humor goes, but I can respect the fact that they're trying to add a little bit of levity to this, because Neil Patrick Harris plays like this analyst, one of the primary bad guys here, in his movie, and he gets funny lines. Of course, it's Neil Patrick Harris. He is very funny, but he gets some funny lines in here, and like here and there, people get their own funny lines, so that way it's not so doggone serious all the time. So they found in my opinion, like a decent balancing act, so it won't be like so. It's not undercutting with humor every little time, but it also not playing it so doggone dark, or like super serious. Then they eventually start tracking down and trying to find Neo, because after Morpheus waking up, he has that need. I gotta find Neo. Neo, now being just Thomas Anderson in the Matrix again, is a video game designer, and he created this video game based off his past memories of being in the Matrix. And he's being like pretty much like monitored and watched, so that way, he's in that tanker in the real world along with Trinity. They can, maintain like their, the machines can maintain, their rule essentially, at least using people as batteries, but they're keeping these two in like a particular isolation room. Every once in a while, you see like Neo, because like Neo and Trinity, they only see each other when they go into the same coffee shop, which is titled Simulate or Simulate. But they when people see them, they have different looks, like gray hair and stuff like that. But to everybody else, they see like a little bit older, but when they look at themselves in the mirror, they see them. But you also meet his business partner, who is secretly Agent Smith. But like I said, there's certain spurts of Agent Smith popping out until Neo is reawakened again. Agent Smith starts to reawaken, because of Neo, he became unplugged. So they're still kind of like tied in some way. So now, he's starting to like, it's like they're not like reigniting that same. I mean, he still has bitterness for, he still doesn't like Neo, but he wants to continue his life without being controlled by the machines. He wants to be in like an outlier himself and remain free and unplugged. And he worried that anytime he comes back in the Matrix, the machines can easily reboot the system and he'll be reassimilating. He doesn't want that. You can see that that's where the next animosity springs up. But there's some growth here, because like, despite, it's kind of like Superman and Lex Luthor, despite their animosity towards each other, there's a bit of level of respect for one another. And that's what I see here. It's like they're bitter enemies that like fought. It's like Vegeta and Goku as well. It's kind of like, despite, well, even though Vegeta and Goku don't hate each other, but it's just like they kind of, the fight kind of, it's like you learn a lot about one another when you fight kind of situation. Or like Akuma and Ryu, or Ryu and Ken Masters. It's kind of like, you can see their growth through their fighting, or like, their evolution, how time has passed and their growth, once they fight or at least interact with each other. Because once, Smith is reawakened and they see each other later in the film as Neo goes to find Trinity to reawaken her, they don't fight right away. They stop to talk. They like, okay, even Smith, despite him mentioning how like he still wants to like, he has a need to want to like hurt Neo, but he has a new life goal that kind of supersedes that kind of need. And besides, you can tell there's some shred of respect he has for Neo. And he's like, you still have a Matrix? Well, don't even have to even deal with each other anymore. I just want to do my thing without having to, you in the mix. And like Neo is just like, because he Smith wanted to deal with the analyst who's pretty much puppeteering a lot of this stuff. And Neo's like, you can have the analyst. I don't care what you do. I just want to get my wife and get the hell out. Which is like, the bare minimum. Like, don't, if they have like one shed of respect, it's like, we'll just like leave each other alone. They are more than willing to leave each other alone. There's no grudge like that with each other. It's like just mutual respect. Like, you respect each other's boundaries, kind of, at least at this point. As time went on, it's like, we'll just respect each other's boundaries, because like we can't get rid of each other anyway. We tried that years ago. We just keep coming back. So it's like, it's really mutual destruction. It's like, we'll just recycle and repeat. We want to like nip that in the bud. They both acknowledge that, and I kind of like that. Anyway, I kind of jumping around, but it's like, I love, you see like certain shots or like flashbacks of moments of like you talk about their first meeting. You see that, interrogation when, Neo's mouth is getting like warped shut. It's like a nice little, like, it's just hits you with like nostalgia, which Morpheus kind of comments on. And you see like when they try to wake up Neo at his job, and like doing like a shootout with some SWAT members between them and Morpheus, Agent Smith starts to reawaken, and then like that, kudos to the actor, because he like really like lean into that Agent Smith, because you can tell like a lot of people will love this franchise and have still respect for the franchise as a whole, despite part 1 and 2, despite part 2 and 3, and like when he just shouted out, "Mr. Anderson," it's like you can like, I can just your brain just automatically falls back to Hugo Weaving's the way he says, "Mr. Anderson," and it's like, it sends chills. Like, this Agent Smith probably doesn't get enough credit as being like an awesome movie villain, and not only that, an awesome evolved movie villain. He's on a whole nother level now. And it's like, I love the idea of Agent Smith. Hugo Weaving made that character super popular. I really like Agent Smith as a character. Awesome movie villain. And then you also meet like the psychiatrist that Neo goes to, played by Neil Patrick Harris, that you later find out is the analyst that's trying to keep, in a sense, keep Neo sedated and under their watchful eye. But then, later on when they tried, well, I'm jumping all over the place. Once they finally exit the Matrix and go to Io, because like that previous Vasage that the humans held up in that cave, like their what's that? Crap, they called it. This is where they had that big giant orgy sex party after in part 2. Zion, yeah, Zion's no more, because like the people of that era, I don't say era, but that back in the day, 60 years ago, still held on to like old ways and beliefs, until like Niobe, when she took a subsection of humans to Io, those who want to work with the machines, because the machines, after the events of the Machine War in Matrix 3, some veered off to side with, to work with, thanks to the whole events with like what Neo did. Some machines, they decided to civil war amongst each other, and some of them who decide to work with Niobe's group to build like a new civilization, with them actually working together. And I thought that was pretty cool. A nice little evolution of what came before. We always want to know like how that all turned out, and now we know, with thanks to Neo and what he did, some machines starting to question their original objective, and part of the way they saw like humans, thanks to what Neo and Trinity did. But there's still some subsection of machines that still want to operate the way they always have with the Matrix. So, now they've got IO with, some of the machines working alongside the humans, building like agriculture and then like an artificial kind of like sky in a way, which is pretty cool. They building fruits and like vegetables and stuff like that instead of the that gruel slop that we saw them eating in those trays in the first movie. It even hinted at like remember that slop they used to give to us before, and it's like now they actually eating strawberries now. So you see, like there's been some time like that kind of they nurtured this new way of thinking and like and this kind of like just like an evolved or at least forward thinking group of machines and people. And it's like something that we probably would have been initially should have done, at least should have happened in the creation of AI from the first, as Morpheus brought up in the first Matrix movie, that when AI was created, they're supposed to have been working together alongside with humans, not overthrow them, which now we actually are getting, which I think that's pretty cool. We finally are getting like some showing of human and machine teamwork. But as happy as Niobe is to see Neo again, she doesn't want him to go back into the Matrix because it will just like put Io in danger, because the machines will just try to like do whatever they can to like maybe like get information from him if he's under again, because it took a lot just to get him out. They'll put Io in danger and pretty much wipe out the rest of the humanity. Any machines left that have like issues with humanity still. And so she decided to confine him into like his room or /cell. No matter how pretty the prison, it's still a cell. But he still wants to get Trinity, despite risking Io in the process, which is kind of like a cool callback to what happened in part 2 and 3, where he pretty much risking the safety of Zion for love for Trinity, even though. And which is another thing that they, kind of like course correct in this movie, is where like we see Neo and Trinity in the coffee shop. They kind of like building rapport, getting to know each other. Something like this seemed like it kind of like brushed off in the, even in the first movie, they kind of like, just because she was told that, oh, you'll fall in love with the one, and it's kind of like you don't see that love seated and sprung up into and blossom into something. This one you can actually see like they're in a coffee shop, they're talking to each other, and like she's going over her like fake family life, but at the time she wasn't awakened, but she's talking about like her kids and like his video game. He's they just just having like a casual conversation. You almost forget like they're in a Matrix. You just seeing Neo and Trinity just sitting down and having a casual conversation. And like now you kind of buy it more when he's going out his way, despite the safety of Io, just to get his love back. And now this Matrix simulation again. So they head back out into the Matrix. They run into Agent Smith again, or the guise of his business partner, and he brings out these exiles, those who escaped the deletion from the old program. And I don't remember, it's 4 of them. I don't remember I only remember one of them. I don't recall the other 3. Maybe if you guys who saw Matrix Resurrections can tell me what the other 3 little dingy Mad Max looking characters that came out of nowhere to fight Neo and his friends, who are they, because I don't recognize them at all. But I only remember the French speaking guy, and that was clearly the French dude that his wife in the second one wanted a kiss from Neo in order to find the key master guy, and like sent in that cake to entice that woman in a different table and stuff like that. Super French. It's like, very stereotypical French dude too, and he's just blathering off without making any kind of sense. He just completely lost his mind. Even like Agent Smith even acknowledged how like weird he is, but he's just like it's like a funny little brush off. I thought that was pretty hilarious. But then after that fight, you even get a little callback when like that fight between Agent Smith and Neo for the first time in that subway, when Agent Smith just like started drill punching him right into the chest really fast. It's a nice little callback because there's two fights out of the entire Matrix franchise that I loved to death and thought it was so well done. Is that subway fight scene? Oh no, three. The subway fight scene in the first one, when Neo's taking on Agent Smith for the first time. Then the second one's when after he accepted being the one, before he got a hold of that payphone, which I'm glad they kind of got rid of the payphone situation. Now they can just go through doorways to get out of the Matrix now, which is a nice touch. But that moment when like he accepted himself being the one finally, and he just like embraced it, and he's like starting just doing cool moves and like blocking Agent Smith's punches in like a very cool move without looking. That was awesome. And then the third awesome fight scene from the Matrix films is when like Neo fight hundreds of Agent Smith in that park. Even though it was very PS2 kind of level graphics, I thought it was still freaking dope. I love that. That's probably one of my favorite fight scenes in like cinema. One of my favorites. Easily part of the top 10. Because it's still cool as hell. But yeah, it was like a nice little callback to that. So when he goes to this little auto body shop where Trinity works at, he stopped by the analyst Neil Patrick Harris, and he mentioned that he's the one that brought them back to life. He only kept them only close enough without them blowing crap up with their united power, but he just don't want to bring anything back to the previous way of the Matrix, but continue on this new way of the Matrix where they still in a way harvesting the fuel from the sedated humans, but they keep, he wants it in a way where it's like not all like all like, because I think the way he put it is kind of the way people commented on how lame Matrix 2 and 3 were, with like the the way the color palette was and the outfits and stuff like that. Now it got like a standard where it's like kind of like modern day kind of clothes and like a little bit more emotion, and like because he acknowledged that human feeling factor, because he's like that's why he's a psychologist. He's like a machine or algorithm that analyze the human psyche. That's why he's a psychiatrist, and therefore he utilized that to make the what he calls sheeple sedated and happy without it them breaking out of that simulation, because it's the danger of the past Matrix where you despite how rare it was to happen, you still ran a danger of somebody realizing they're in like a simulation and coming out of it. As long as it's not like mundane or boring, you have like something like something that's I won't say fun, but it's kind of like where like you expect like every day right now should be, where it's like you got the parties, and not like you didn't have parties before, but it's like in a club setting or like rooftop parties and bars, and like it's just like you get sunrise, you get color, it's not so drab looking. It's like it's just like you go to coffee shops, you do all this stuff that you wouldn't even expect any kind of coming out of this simulation if you come out of it. It's a very low chance of coming out of it until like Neo, when Bugs looks upon Neo for the first time and just looking at his eyes, kind of like, I guess he still got that part of him that might, people who were more enthusiastic or more, I guess, geared towards trying to come out of, or at least enticed to come out of the simulation, will, upon looking at Neo, like Bugs, or like Morpheus, who just happened upon, for some reason, just noticed like the whole touching the glass and it turns to liquid, and he acknowledges, okay, this is like a bug, I guess, like that happened, that kind of forces him to acknowledge that he's not in the real world. And it kind of, that's why he acted weird when he first meets Bugs. That he's already acknowledging that this is I gotta play along, but this is not the real world, obviously. But he threatened to kill Trinity if he doesn't come back to the Matrix. But he comes up, Neo comes up with an idea where, they should let like Trinity choose herself. If she doesn't choose him, then he'll willingly come back to the Matrix, no issues. But he has to agree to let them both go if she chooses Neo, which the analyst agrees. But where he didn't expect it to happen, she eventually snaps out of it and it's like, don't ever call, like, it's like he trying to, the analyst trying to bring in those simulated husband and kids, which she doesn't have, and they call her Tiffany, and she just like this, like kind of like a very badass way. It's like, don't call me that. My name is Trinity, and he just start kicking ass. And I liked what they did with like, utilizing, like these analysts utilizing the CPU kind of people, or at least people who are under, and kind of take them over, where they got these green eyes, like with the digital thing going down their eyes, and it's like, it's very like, it turns into like a Resident Evil George Romero's zombie movie, where there's all these computer CPU people are trying to come after Neo and his friends, and like they even like they jumping out the windows and come in and like trying to stop them with their own bodies. It's like, holy shit, that was like intense. It's just like one dude waking up out of bed with his girl, and she's wondering like what's wrong, and then she starts screaming, and he just jumped out the freaking window and started laying on the cars as they trying to run away. And it's like, holy crap, that's intense. Then but early, before getting ahead of myself, Agent Smith comes up out of nowhere when things start to escalate, because the analyst can stop time. He's like completely control, how like things move here, and but he cannot control the anomaly of Agent Smith. So he comes in. This is like an unexpected ally to Neo, where it's like, just to buy Neo and his friends some time to get out of the Matrix, as he wants them out of the Matrix. He comes in and just beats the shit out of Neil Patrick Harris, and just like, holy shit, like, because that part is probably honestly my favorite part of the film, because I did not expect that to come. That was never hinted, or because like I almost completely forgot about Agent Smith up to this point. It's like he's like a Deus Ex Machina, and it's like expecting like Thanos to come in to help stop Galactus. Like, you would never in a million years would expect that to happen. One of the biggest bad guys out of the Matrix franchise come in out of nowhere to help, Neo, just like a temporary truce. That was pretty dope. Then they, eventually, Neo and Trinity stop for time to let the others get out so they won't get killed, because they're pretty much the primary focus. Then as they come up, about to hop off the top of the building, and because Neo still hasn't flown yet, and as they jump off the building, because Neo's still stopping bullets, utilizing force powers and stuff like that. Because his powers started to, come back, and he's like just awesome moves. He like mentally moving missiles back into other, helicopters. It's very cool stuff. And as they jumping off the top of the rooftop, he's not flying, but Trinity is. So she is sharing the one powers, I guess. And just like they're like they're a strong unit, so they're sharing as like a strong unit the power, and so they end up flying off and escaping the Matrix. Later on in the end, you see them come back and just wreck the office of the analyst. They come in and Trinity is like, as a callback to what she said she wanted to do with her fake husband, like kick him just hard enough to break his jaw. She actually does that to the analyst, and she then cuts off, his head, of course, and she just can complete control now because, they're like they regain their powers. Because it's like I don't know why they had like the analyst talk very male chauvinistic. It's like, can't you control her kind of situation, and calling her a bitch and stuff like that, and she just beating the shit out of his ass and cutting off his head, and then snapping her fingers and reassembling him. And like she did another move, and it's like that was for using children. And of course, like the analyst, like, do what you will, paint the sky in rainbows for all I care, because you're not going to get all these people, you're not going to get these sheeple out of the Matrix, because they don't want to leave, because they're happy. I make sure they're content. And even though, they dismiss this because they were still going to try, and they fly off, and the movie ends. And I honestly believe this is just another part one, because I honestly believe, despite the fact some people didn't go to the theater to see this because it was on HBO Max, I cannot say whether or not it was a smart move to allow it to play in theaters and HBO Max, but I believe they just taking precautionary measures, like with Wonder Woman 2, to give it, people who don't feel comfortable going to the theaters during the whole, still, because the pandemic's still going on with the Omicron variant and stuff like that. They still want to give people an option, so they still kept it on HBO Max for at least for a little while. I'm not sure how long, but it might just play out the same way as Wonder Woman 2 played out, and they just kept it on HBO Max because people are still paying for HBO Max, monthly subscriptions and stuff like that. So it's not like they're losing any money. But yeah, I really dug this. I'm not sure how long they're gonna keep it on HBO Max though. It's just like, I don't know. It's gonna be a brief stint where they take it off. Because normally some streaming services, like Encanto was. Check out my Encanto video on I did a spoiler review of that a few minutes ago. That's youtube.com/talkativecarl. Links in the description. Unlike that, where it's like it was already in theaters during the Thanksgiving Day weekend, and it took at least over a month before it came out on Disney Plus for free for everybody. The same thing when it came to the live action Mulan and so forth. HBO Max for the most part isn't doing that. Something like I said, Wonder Woman 2 and in this movie, Matrix Resurrections, they just play it safe and play it some in some theaters and play out on HBO Max. It all depends how comfortable you are at going to the theater. I think they probably now regretting that because everybody and their mama went out to go see Spider-Man No Way Home and broken $1 billion because it's like, damn that. But they also still had to contend with, even though they did not choose to keep it just in theaters and also allowed it on HBO Max, if they chose to keep it only in theaters, they still had to contend with the competition of Spider-Man, one of the most beloved characters around the globe, next to Batman and Superman. So I think there might have been a danger of still losing some box office money one way or another. This, I think, is still fair, where they're still kind of at I think they'll still break even. I think they'll still be successful because I still enjoyed this movie. There might be some people who might disagree, but I think this is a solid film. Is what like I would have expected Matrix 2 should have been, because this is would have been a more proper sequel to the first Matrix movie. So I like it. Like I said, it's a nice little course corrections on some things that we never liked in the previous films. And despite a few nitpicks that I mentioned here and there, I think it's still a solid film. But let me know in the comments what you thought of Matrix Resurrections. If you saw it already, it's on HBO Max. If you are inclined to watch it, it's nearly 3 hours long. So like, I suggest you kind of rest up and make sure you're mentally awake to watch and absorb what you're seeing, and like just lose all the preconceived notions of it just be another drab Matrix regurgitating philosophy speak, because like I said, they kind of course corrected it and make kind of like a simplified Matrix movie, and you still get all the fun stuff. They kind of cherry picked all the good stuff that we loved about the Matrix. You might find a little stuff here and there that you might not like, but by and large, it's worth a watch. So thank you all for joining me. Don't forget to leave a like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff to the links in the description. I will see you guys probably in a couple of days. I will make probably Thursday, I will make a video about all the movies that I enjoyed this year in 2021 before the new year. And take care, everybody.